Welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman, your host. We're going to check out this week the 2022 version of the Queen's Cup, sponsored by the South Shore Yacht Club in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We talked with a couple of the first skippers across the line, and we also got a chance to talk to Craig Griffiths and Sherry Kent, who are the chairman and chairwoman of the event. And they talked about this year's race, the kind of organization that goes into it, and a little bit about being chairfolk for an event that's kicks off the 2022 sort of Great Lakes sailing season. We also had a chance to talk with Dr. Philip O'Neill. He was Natalie J. GP52 was the first across the line about 3 o'clock in the morning. This is a very interesting sprint, and we'll talk a little bit about the actual race itself. And then we got a chance to finish up the conversation with Bob Hughes, who's a kind of a standard on the show for GP52s. He's the skipper of Heartbreaker, and talked about what a fun race it was. And he lost the race by a little over a minute. And when you go 68 miles, sometimes that's, as the name indicates, that's a heartbreak. Anyway, it's a really good show. We think you'll enjoy learning a little bit about this year's Queen's Cup. And we'll be back with those guys in just a couple seconds.
We're talking with 2022 South Channel Yacht Club Queen's Cup co-chairs, Craig Griffith and Sherry Kent. And I appreciate you taking some time. This is Saturday morning early, so I really appreciate you taking some time to talk to us. And you guys had one of the most successful races just in terms of the competitiveness. It was like a drag race across Lake Michigan. So Craig or Sherry, it doesn't really matter. Just talk a little bit about the race this year and your thoughts.
Well, the race this year itself, we couldn't have asked for better weather. It was a beautiful day, relatively flat lake. From what I understand, it was a tight reach all the way across to the finish. Breeze took people a little bit north at the end and caused people to make some good decisions as to whether to go in or tack south. On the tracker, we were watching closely the line honor's boat, Natalie J, battle with Heartbreaker at the end, and it was a long fought battle, but Natalie J came out ahead at the end, and the addition of the trackers really added a lot of excitement and a lot of about the race and brought a lot of people into it. So,
Sherry, you guys had 90 boats this year?
Yeah, we had 105 register.
Okay.
And about 90 that did the race, which is a little bit lower. We were in competition with another race this year, just the way the calendar fell with all, big events like GP. So that shifted a bit, but we were really happy with what we had. Our quality of competition was top notch. And the Queen's Cup attracts everything. I mean, we get small cruising boats to the TP52. So it's really a neat race. And the crew, as always, the crew is made up of, double handers, which are sometimes families, to, the pros. So it's interesting.
When you see a race, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, our as Craig mentioned, it was close this year. In each of the sections after the race, it was fun to talk to the competitors because in each section, the top boats were just neck and neck. And literally, as you said, a drag race across the lake.
You go 68 miles and there's just a little over a minute and change, separating the first two boats over the line. That's, as you're watching the tracker, I think we were watching the tracker till about, does it sound maybe 3 a.m? Does that sound about right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
And-
sounds about right.
So I'm in my bed watching with my computer watching this race like I'm watching television, and I would watch a little YouTube and I'd come back to the race. I thought it was it was kind of cool, and both the competitors, both Dr. O'Neill and Bob Hughes were very complimentary to you guys as far as running the race when you have those kinds of races. So just two logistical questions. You guys go obviously from Milwaukee across. You go to, what are the three or four cities that you guys end up in, and how do you pick those cities?
Well, we reach out to clubs on the other side of the lake and about hosting the finish. We usually go a couple years in advance to allow the finish host club to prepare and promote the race on the Michigan side, and we really view it as a partnership to work with with the finish club to not only bring all these people to their town and highlight their club and the city that they're in. Grand Haven was a phenomenal host this year. In addition to for the finish, they had a build your own Bloody Mary bar and were handing grilled cheese sandwiches to people walking in the door of the club, which the look of shock on people's face, grilled cheese. Okay, what was wonderful, and then the city itself rolled out the red carpet for us. We used their amphitheater on the river for the awards. They had an art festival going on, and it was just a wonderful weekend.
I was thinking the comfort food of grilled cheese. Maybe they've set precedent now. That'll be part of your negotiation,
Yeah.
for your next yacht club.
Yeah, well, I did. We are finishing in Muskegon next year, and I did mention to them, I'm like, if you do want to one up Grand Haven, I'd recommend some tomato soup.
Where do you finish next year?
Muskegon.
Okay,
So,
so there's no rotation. It literally could be whoever you get out ahead of it a year or two in advance. Is that fair?
yeah, that's fair. And any club that is interested in finishing a Queen's Cup, please reach out to us. We're more than happy to have discussions with you, and we understand how much of an effort is involved, and it's typically done by volunteers on both sides of the lake. So you don't want to burn your team out either. So.
Sherry, last year you raced on a 52. This year you were in the committee boat. Just talk briefly about the different views, one from being sailing and one from being on a committee boat. Obviously, you know where you'd rather be, but you said something before we started the interview. I just thought I'd throw that question in.
Well, it was interesting. I've never been at the start on a small boat. I've always been on the boat. So to see them go by is incredible. Even the smaller boats look huge. And when the TP-52s crossed at Startling, I was like, wow, that's a pretty big transom. It was just a really interesting perspective. And it's also interesting to watch each section start because everybody's competitive. And you really get a sight down that line and you can see them. They've got 68 miles in front of them. It could be 68 yards as far as the competition is concerned at the start. So it was a really neat perspective. I enjoyed that. I don't want to do that next year. I want to be on a boat, but
back on a boat. No,
yeah, I want to go back on, but it was a really neat thing to do. It was fun. And people love it. They're into it. It's serious.
Yeah.
It's fun.
The one question I've been thinking about wanting to ask you guys, and I think this is for both of you, talk briefly about 2 days before the race. Craig, a phone number is listed on your website for getting a hold of anybody that has an answer or a question or an inquiry to the Queen's Cup. Talk briefly about what your phone must look like, 18 hours out, 24 hours out. How many phone calls do you get, the Friday before you guys take off?
Actually, surprisingly few phone calls. There are a lot of, a number of general inquiries that our office staff is able to handle. More so the week approaching the event, I'm busy chasing down rating certificates and things like that. As we've had some issues in the past, and again this year we're getting certificates out of some organizations, but eventually we got them all, and everybody was able to race. So.
Well,
We
Patrick,
we did a couple things. We changed some things this year, which I think we changed for the better, and our feedback dictates that as well. We can talk about some of that in a minute, but one thing we did that answers your question about the 24 hours in advance, because it's crazy, but we did an FAQ sheet with barcodes,
yeah.
and we plastered it all over the yacht club. I got some dirty looks when I went into the men's room to tack them up, but they served their purpose. And that was really useful for the spectators, friends and family, the competitors, everybody. We had links for Regatta Network, Yellow Brick, all kinds of things, as well as general questions that people typically ask. And that, I think, really helped people, and it helped the staff.
Okay.
So that's one of the things we changed this year.
What did you guys change overall from, suggestions? You mentioned that. What did you guys alter?
Well,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay, well, we went with, I'll talk about Yellow Brick, and Craig, if you want to grab Regatta Network, but
Sure.
we added YB Yellow Brick tracking we listened to our feedback from the last
Right.
few years, and we added that, and it was tremendous. I mean, thousands and thousands for a 100 boat race. The attention that we got, the feedback and the participation was absolutely huge. And there's just no doubt we'll do that as long as Yellow Brick or some resource like that exists.
Essentially, it's some kind of a box, some kind of, explain what it is. It's a tracker so people can watch the race, but each boat gets, what does each boat get? Like a telephone size?
The tracking device is they have it in a sleeve that is very easily secured to your boat via Velcro ties, zip ties, whatnot. You can attach it to your boat 6 ways from Sunday. But they're look like essentially an old cell phone to a certain extent.
Okay.
Very ruggedized, very durable. But it's about the size of a thick cell phone, and you just strap it onto a stanchion on your boat, and away you go.
Craig, answer or don't answer, but how expensive is it I'm assuming lease, rent, those, it's a service, I'm assuming that somebody
Yeah,
provides.
it's a service. The YB tracking is out of the UK. It's not inexpensive, but from a race management and safety perspective, it's definitely invaluable and worth its weight in gold.
What's the cost you per boat?
I don't recall offhand what the exact cost was, but it is rather significant, and the loss of the trackers is even more. And I will say about the competitors, we did put a hold on people's credit cards when we were distributing the trackers, and everybody was understanding and willing and to work through the process. And I think we've got a decent process in place that we'll tweak a little bit for next year, but no problem distributing or picking up the tracker. Yellow Brick our YB tracking is a good partner to work with, and we'll be having a postmortem with them after the race to address a couple hiccups we had, but overall it was a huge success for our first year with them. And then I was going to add that this year we also switched to partnering with Regatta Network for race management and scoring, and that as well, we got some
Huge.
wonderful feedback on having real-time results posted throughout the night was wonderful. We got a lot of compliments on that, and it really simplified things for us from a race management perspective.
Without giving a name away or things, just any thoughts or any anecdotes of sort of the two of you looking at each other, somebody gives a request. I guess I'm looking for sort of kind of a funny anecdote type deal. You look at each other, somebody just asks something. Do you get those often, or is it just not the kind of thing that happens with sail racing?
As far as funny questions, such
Yeah, I mean,
as
I think of the rock stars who want to have only M&Ms, blue M&Ms in the dressing room kind of thing. You have to have some, and again, I don't want to give away a particular name, but there's got to be some persnickety stories of some sort. Just got to make
really
it
the biggest thing I think was when boats were picking up trackers and registering and going through that process. Often people were like, as things were wrapping up, they're like, so what's next? I'm like, sail east really fast. Something gets in your way, turn.
We we get a lot of questions like how many people are on a crew in the double hand section? You know, that's and you know, questions like that we get, just funny things. But I would say overall, our competitors for this race, there's not a lot of, you know, only green M&Ms type competitors in this race. It's, you know, we'll keep an eye out though for you for the future. We'll come up with,
Yeah.
Well,
we'll have some
the reason I asked the question,
something.
And
It's
with as
not-
diverse a fleet as we have, you know, you'd never know who's going to win. We had boats that had perf ratings anywhere from, I believe, was it -95? No,
Mhm.
or was it 195? Gee, don't remember anymore. All the way up to 206.
very successful race. And next year you end up, you said, in Muskegon. And I just wanted to thank you both for your time, and hopefully it'll be a great race next year. We're talking with renowned skipper of Heartbreaker, Bob Hughes. Bob, you just competed in the 2022 Queen's Cup out of Milwaukee, and it was almost a drag race. So maybe talk briefly about coming across the lake, 68 miles on I think a beam reach, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah. First, the Queen's Cup, I think, is one of those, when I first got into sport, those Great Lake Classic races. You have the Mac races, and you have Harbor Springs, you have the Nude, and the Queen's Cup is just a great race. And I have a huge affinity for it because it was the first big race we ever won overall in 1989 on the J35. And that was back in the day. We didn't even know we won. I had gone home back to Grand Rapids, and someone called and said, "You got to come out for the awards ceremony." Like, we won, and it was shocking. So that was neat. But it's such a great race, and it's across the lake. It's at night. It's in Lake Michigan. You have the stars out, and weather-wise, you never know what you're gonna get. But yeah, it is a beam reach, and the apparent wind angle was kind of, we were sailing with a jib 55 to kind of 60 outboard leads, tweaking it and so forth. And we started in about 10 to 12 knots of breeze. And that held for the vast majority of the race until about 8 miles from the Michigan shore, when, like, our weather briefing had said, it was going to start to lighten up, which it did. And our weather briefing, we'd also come to the conclusion that we thought at the end, when you got close to Michigan shore, we wanted to protect from a right shift. And unfortunately, that's not exactly what happened.
Now you went farther east than Natalie J, who eventually won. But I have two questions. Why did you go farther east? And then the follow-up to that question is, you lose by a minute and change. That's got to drive you nuts.
Yeah, I mean, first thing, they sailed a great race, and yeah, you hate losing to your friends, but you also like beating your friends. But at least it's somebody that you respect, because they're great sailors and they do a great job sailing the boat. But with the race started off on the starting line, and we're trying to decide, do we want to be to windward or leeward? And leeward would be north. And in the way the starting line set it up, we were originally going to go to try to be north of them, to windward to leeward. Excuse me, to windward to leeward, yes. And the way the start shook out, they did a little bit better job. So they were to leeward. We were right next to them, like 2 boat lengths to windward, and they were maybe a quarter to a half a boat length poked out. And they just got a brand new mast. Their boat is a little bit faster than us. They owe us some time. That's not a really good place to be, because you think they're probably going to sail away. They're either going to pinch up and slowly burn you off, or they're going to be able to put the bow down and rumble away, and you're going to fall in line, and there's no passing on a reach across the lake. So, but our team just did a phenomenal job. It is, trimming the main and the jib and the outboard leads, and working the boat and hiking and playing the puffs, and we're able to hold there. And when you say drag race, it was the first 3 hours, some of the most intense racing that I've ever done in the Queen's Cup, because we were trying to live and stay there. And on the Queen's Cup, you're always sailing through slower boats that you're passing that started ahead of you. So you want to stay out of the dirty air. And ultimately, if you can get a pick on somebody, that can help you out. But we had to be able to live there. So after 2.5 hours, we were finally able to get out of our precarious position and kind of move forward with them, get bows even. And then we were able to push down a little bit. And then a gift from God happened. There was a slower boat up in front. It was just in a perfect position where I was able to get the bow down a little bit them and force Natalie to go below them, and we stay above them. and that put Natalie behind us into leeward. We're like, oh my God, it was such a hard fight. My arms were about to fall off because when you're steering those boats with a tiller in 12 or 13 knots and the jib is loaded, it's something on the arms. But the team just did a great job getting the boat going fast. We're like, oh, so now we go for another 3 hours and they're to leeward. And really, at this point, we're both north of the rum line. And stay between your opponent and the basket is always really good defense. And so, Grand Haven is still to the east of us. So they start dripping a little bit more north, and we go with them, but we don't go far enough. And there's only one way in the world these guys are going to get past us at this point, is if they get enough lateral leverage and the wind shifts left, they're going to be able to attack and go across us. And we're protecting, to answer your question, we're trying to stay a little bit east, and we're still north of the rum line, but we didn't want to go all the way north like them because we thought that was extra distance sailed, and we were trying to protect from a shift going to the right. Well, 7-8 miles out, all of a sudden, they've got this lateral separation, and the wind starts going left, and you always exaggerate a little bit when you're telling the story, but it was somewhere between like a 20 and 30 degree shift. And before you know it, after getting us out of a bad position, having them where we wanted, now all of a sudden our bow is down, theirs is down, and we're going for a few miles. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to be able to tack and cross us. And they do. They tack and cross like 6 miles from the Michigan shore, and they pass us by probably, I don't know, 10, 20 boat lengths or something like that. And you're just so upset with yourself. And then the wind got a bit shifty. We kept going and tried to say, well, maybe we can make this work for us, because they went earlier than we did. But when we were coming back at them the other way, we tacked back over to port. We thought we had them for a bit, but it didn't work out, and they beat us. And then, on the corrected, it was a little over a minute. So you think of all the things you could have, should have done. And, in sailing, I always say, well, if I make a mistake once and we cannot make it again, we've been doing it long enough, we've pretty much made all the mistakes, but sometimes you keep repeating them. But they did the one thing they could done to get out of that situation, and they sailed their boat super fast, which was great. And they won. And but the best thing about that race, you hate to lose, but it was such a great dogfight drag race. I've done a zillion of those, and I can't remember one that was that intense.
Does it matter if you lose by a minute or 10 minutes? Does it make it worse at a minute versus maybe losing by 10 or 12 or 15 minutes?
Losing is losing, but when you do lose by a minute, you think of all the little things that if you would have just done a little bit better, if I would have concentrated a little bit harder, tried a little bit higher, if we would have, that makes it more painful.
How long, I say this as a coach, but how long do you keep that in your head? Is that gone in 24 hours? All those doubts?
God, it's a great question because, we race these boats on the lakes for a short season. So you look forward to each event so much, and you wanted to do well in this one. But that's what's great about this 52 class. The competitors are also evenly matched and also good. When you do one, you feel great. When you lose, it's not like, you didn't lose to somebody that's really good. So it bums me out for like the next 24 hours. And then you can't wait for the next race to try to redeem yourself. But the next 24 hours, my wife is like, Bob, just get over it. So, but you call Phil and Bora and tell them they did a great job, because they did. Their whole team sailed their boat awesome.
It's if you don't give it up, especially if the next competition's coming, it's that wave coming. It doesn't continue to, it just keeps coming at you. If you can't give it up, it makes you hard. It's like the golf shot. You miss one, if you don't let that bad golf shot go, it's going to affect you for the next 5. It really is.
Yeah, exactly. And also there was an aspect here, Phil, we missed a few regattas last year with our cracked mast. Well, they missed most of the year where they dropped their mast. And Phil is just such an outstanding, him and Sharon run such a great program, and Ben Stalwart's the Great Lakes Racing Forever. I know what that was like not to be able to race, and to have him, if anyone was going to beat us, he certainly deserved to, because he missed so much last year, and they've been so good for so long. So that made it feel a little bit better.
You got the 2 Macs that are obviously over 250 miles. This is a 68 miles. That's more of a sprint than it is anything else. Is that a good race to open the season?
We open up with our first buoy regatta, which we had this year, which we ended up moving to Holland because of some Chicago issues with just logistics. But the Queen's Cup, I love it as a classic race, would always do it. But for the Mac races, you're spot on. It's overnight, it's offshore, you get the different gear and sails on board. It's a great tune-up for the Mac race. and some night racing and so forth. So yeah, I think it gives you a leg up for the boats that do it versus don't in terms of some good MAC race preparation.
Any changes to crew this year?
Yeah, we do have some changes. We've got some great people on board and really excited about that, that are excited to be on the team and have the same goals and are attracted to the level of racing that we have on the lakes. So, this year the Port Huron is first. Simon and Graham are getting ready to leave in a week to do that big delivery over to Port Huron, and we're excited for that. There'll be Cove Island this year. We're kind of feel jinxed because we've won overall the Port Huron 2 years in a row, and I dreamed one day would we ever win an overall. So that's kind of cool. So we'll give it a shot for next year, and then hopefully we can do a little bit better with the Chicago MAC this year. Last year we got a little too close to the Michigan coast
Right.
and ended up in a YouTube video of us drifting and being mocked. So hopefully we can do better than that.
When I interviewed you last year for that race, you talked about when you could hear the chainsaws offshore.
Yes.
You got too close. You got too close to offshore. So
Yes.
that's
Got woken up by a chainsaw during a MAC race. That's unusual. And then maybe I shared the part with the guy that came out on the kayak that 20 years ago, one of our hats had washed up on the shore, and his wife gave it to him as his favorite hat. And then that morning last year, his wife woke him and said, "You'll believe this, the Heartbreaker's drifting in front of our house." And he came out and visited us in a kayak. It was the most serpent, whatever that word is, I've ever experienced a yacht racing. So it's funny.
the 52 feet, the Great Lakes Foot 52 fleet. Chris Duhan has not been involved yet. I think Mr. Wild is left. Where does the fleet sit right now? Because you've added some boats, but you've also lost some boats.
No, actually, it's really exciting. I'm glad you asked this question. So Chris had some paint work done on his boat because he took it down to Florida to race, and just there's been some challenges with supply chains and stuff like that. He's shipping back on the 12th, so he will be here for the Chicago MAC race, and that's the 4-core boats. But my old boat is owned by some people over in Wisconsin. They just did the Queen's Cup, and Eric Weinsma, a longtime West Michigan sailor, just bought a 52 that's here. Their Queen's Cup is their first race, and they had a great race with it. It's a great family program. And there's another guy in Wisconsin. I think his name is Scott Morrison. He just took a 52 that came from San Diego. They're working on it. He owns a yard over in Wisconsin, so that's going to be in the Queen's Cup.
Okay.
And there's a guy, Nimbus from Buffalo, that's coming. So I think there's going to be like 8 52s on the line for the MAC races. And then the 2 boats that you talked about, Fox and Interlodge and Vesper, that were here last year. The plan right now is everybody's coming back to the lakes next year.
Okay.
So those are boats that live on the East and West Coast. They came the last 2 years. This year they stayed on the East Coast, but they're coming back next year. So goodness gracious, next year is going to be unbelievable. But the fleet is actually growing here, so we're really excited about that. The boats are, they're such amazing boats because you can race them around the buoys, but then the MAC races you can race first to the island, and some of the prices now are down on some of the older boats, and more people are grabbing them. So yeah, I'm really excited when we line up for the Chicago MAC. There's going to be 7 or 8 boats on the line now. The fleet is actually growing.
Some of the 2006, 7, 8 boats that are now in the 500,000 and less in some cases. What kind of dollar?
Less than that.
Yeah, what kind of dollar money do you got to put in to keep up with the recent boat teams that are built in the last 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, well, they're definitely less than the more recent boats for sure, because ours is a 215, Duhan's is a 215, Doug's is the old Quantum's a 215, and Phil's is close to that. The newest ones are 18s. They haven't built any since 18. So those are the ones that are still in the Super Series. So all the ones that are kind of before that are like 208s, 209s, and those prices have come down. I know what my one sold for, and I was shocked at, if you're a buyer, how great of a price and what a value is that you can buy a boat and race to the island first. So you had to have a Santa Cruz 72 to get to the island first. And now it's a 52-foot boat that can get you there. But those older boats around the lakes, they're awesome, Greg, because they have a little bit narrow water line. And when it's lighter air, that less wetted surface, they can beat your boat for boat, even though they're 6-7 years older. And on a handicap, it's when those boats are so well, they have just as good a chance as winning as the newer boats, for sure.
Good luck coming up at the MAC. Hopefully we'll see you in Port Huron, and appreciate your time.
No, thank you. Hopefully we'll have some great win for both races, and we'll all get to enjoy this great race. And thanks for covering our great sport.
We're talking with Natalie J. Skipper, Dr. Philip O'Neill. First of all, congratulations on a 2022 win in the Queen's Cup.
Hey,
Great victory. after a bit of a tough 2021 season with a variety of issues, you got off the mark. I knew you had a buoy race to start the season, but this is sort of that first drag race, if you will, to get the season going with the 52s. And you guys had a fabulous race against some pretty stiff competition.
Yeah, it was really fun having 4 of the 52s out there, and Gauntlet was in our class as well. And like I say, it's always fun racing against Bob Hughes, because he's always well prepared, does a great job sailing, and if you beat him, you knew you did a good job. And so I've always enjoyed racing against Bob and his team.
So talk about this year versus last year. Last year you had some issues with the boat, and obviously it sounds like you're in the boat is in tip-top physical shape finally, 100%. Is that accurate?
That's true. Yes. Losing the mast halfway through the season last year just ruined our entire season back then. So we were able to build a brand new mast, make some design modifications to it. And it took us quite a while in the spring to get it installed in the boat and get it tuned up correctly. And I mean, their tuning guide is to the millimeter, so you want to make sure that everything is tip top. I don't want to lose another mast.
No. How expensive are masts on a 52? Is that a 6-figure deal or a high figure, 5-figure deal?
Oh no, it's well into the 6 figures. It's ridiculous number.
Yeah. We have this discussion all the time. You guys are really AAA baseball. You're not just casual weekend sailors. You're truly yachtsmen versus, somebody like me who does, beer-handed racing kind of thing.
Well, we try. I think that the level that our Great Lakes 52 class is sailing is pretty impressive. I know, DeVos always has, a whole ton of pros that are on there. And while they're probably not the same caliber as his European 52, he definitely brings a full cadre of professional sailors. And Bob Hughes has Paul Goodison calling his tactics this year, who, was, I think, flight controller for American Magic. And so it's pretty impressive out there.
Now you've got Bora Garley on your boat this year, my mistake. Is that true?
Yeah. Bora has been sailing with me since he's 17. So he's always part of the program. And he's the one who has all of the engineering ideas and the different things to make the boat go fast. And he himself is a great tactician, and we rely on Bora a lot.
You had a lured race, you had a buoy race to start the season, but obviously the Queen's Cup is the sort of first get off the mark, bit of a short overnight, kind of gets you ready, I would think, for the Max, both the Mac races. And just talk briefly about this year's Queen's Cup.
Well, we thought that it was going to be lightish air, and instead it turned out to be fairly brisk at the start. So we were living with our projection that the air was going to die. So we started with our light 1. It seemed to me that Bob started with either a 1.5 or a J2. And early on, we were able to hold our gauge with Bob and actually creep ahead of him. And then the breeze started to build up into 18 knots, and our light 1 hurt us on that, and Bob was able to squirt ahead. So we just concentrated on keeping our gauge and staying in touch with Bob. And we were further north than he was. And actually, I think at that point, he was probably closer to the mark than us. But we were able to, 3/4 of the way across, put up a jib or a Genoa staysail, and that allowed us to sag off, gain some separation, and move ahead. And then we were able to cross him and get to his southern side, windward side, and we actually wound up laying the finish mark perfectly. So, and that was it. Bob wasn't able to lay, and he had to do an extra tack to get over there. So that's how we beat him.
He went a little too far east, and the joke was that last year when they were in the MAC, Chicago to MAC, that he was woken up by a chainsaw from shore. And that's, as he says, that's getting a little too close, but you won by a minute and change. Would you rather win by a minute and change or win by 20 minutes? Is there a difference?
Oh, no. But it's interesting because when I had my TP52, the last year that I had it, I won the season, but I was always watching them finish and then I would correct over. And that just wasn't as much fun. If you can't sail next to the guy and hold your lane, that's what sailboat racing is for us. And that's why I decided to switch boats so that I had a boat that was equal to Bob and equal to DeVos's boat. And that's been just way more fun. It's been more challenging for us, for sure, getting things sorted out and tuned up. But I think the new rig has been helpful, and we've just got a dedicated crew and we're working hard at it.
With the Bayview race coming up, the 52s are going to kind of get back almost full service. There's been some boats missing. Obviously, Chris Duhan had some painting issues and getting that kind of squared away. It'll be nice, I'm assuming, to get back to a full group. Is that fair? Oh
yeah, it's always more fun when you have more competitive boats sailing against you. Yeah, we've missed Chris. Been unfortunate that he hasn't been able to get his boat up and ready, and I understand that he's dropped out of the Bayview race, so that's sad. But I talked to him the other day and he'll be there for the Chicago race and for the rest of the season for us. And so we still have a lot to go. We're going to do both Mackinacs, then we have Harbor Springs, then we're doing our own Bay Harbor 4-day regatta up there. And then following that, we'll have our season championship back in Macatawa. And, Eric Wiseman bought a 52, so he was out for the first time in the Queen's Cup. And Grit came back, which is Bob's old boat, and sailed in that. And I know that there's another boat coming from Lake Erie, 52, that's going to sail in the Bayview Mackinac race. So, yeah, we're looking forward to all of that.
That's the one from Buffalo, right?
Yes.
Okay. You should mention too that 52s. I mean, I get that there's a difference between a 2006 or 7 and 52 and one of the more modern ones, but the old Natalie J, now called Hooligans, was second in its class in the Newport to Bermuda race.
Oh yeah, those guys are sailing the hell out of that boat, and I couldn't be happier for those guys. They're great fun. Those are the people that I wanted to buy my boat. They sail it all the time. It was interesting. I went out to do the Black Island race on Arctos, and I saw my old boat across the way, and Warrior One was docked next to us. And so we were all in their class for the Black Island race, and my old boat won, Warrior One was second, and we were third. So, I mean, it was great. And then I ran into them when I did the Bermuda race on Arctos as well. So I ran into their whole team there at Bermuda Yacht Club. So really fun people and great sailors.
Where's your boat now?
It is in Muskegon, out of the water. Yeah, doing some last minute preps because we've got a long haul to get from Muskegon all the way over to Port Huron. So we're getting Oregon.
You get any practice time in while you're up in Port Huron before the race?
Doubtful. I think that our crew comes from all over the place, and it's hard to get them organized. But after we got the rig sorted, then we had a full 3-day weekend up in Muskegon to do crew training and get going. And on any major regatta, we always show up a day early and spend the whole day practicing. So, and then when we did that, the fleet was supposed to do the nude regatta over in Chicago, but because Duhan dropped out and another boat wasn't going to be there, we decided to just do the three of us in Macatawa. And the way the group works is we go out, we do the races, we have our own PRO, we use the mark bots, and then we have a debrief with all the teams and show video, ask questions. Why did you do this? How come your traveler was this? Look at how your leech was open. So we all share that data. And to me, that's just invaluable. You can't get that kind of coaching.
Is sharing the knowledge coming from the top down? And I say that because SailGP, everybody gets that same information from Oracle. Every statistic, every fact, every nuance. Is that something that's new to this crew, to this syndicate, or is that something that's always been done?
Since we formed this group, that's sort of been led by WinQuest's team, because they have all the tools to do that.
Right.
I mean, we collect all the data on our own boat, but they collect it. They have the drones out there. They have a chase boat that takes photos of all the boats, and they provide the coaching. I mean, they sit down, we do a video review. They share all of that knowledge with us. There's nothing secret to them. It's more fun if everybody increases their sailing ability in these boats. These boats are they're very simple to sail, but they're very complicated. And you're before you leave the dock, you got to decide what shims you're going to put in, where the butt position is going to be, how much your backstay is going to be, what your rake is going to be for that day. And it just goes on and on and on. And you need to start somewhere from that. And then as you get used to it, you can develop your own numbers. But there's a lot going on.
I asked the question because one of the things that we learned when I was in Chicago for SailGP was they try to make everything is the same. Larry Ellison owns all the boats, and then you rent the boat from the organization. But all of the information, even if they're changing wings, it's known 12 hours in advance. They want the best sailor to win, not necessarily the best rigged boat. And with all these arguments that PHFRF and all of the different acronyms for everybody's always looking for a head up, but the higher you go in sailing, the more they want it to be the sailor that wins, not necessarily the boat. And I just think that is such a purist attitude that would be beneficial if they could work its way down the racing ladder.
Yeah, it's interesting. Early on my sailing career, everything was a secret. Nobody wanted to tell you anything.
Right.
You went out there and you go, how can, and it takes you a hell of a lot longer to figure out how come I'm not going as fast as somebody else. And here it's quite the opposite. It's, Phil, your traveler needs to be up way higher in light air, and here's why. And then they explain it to you and I go, oh, and then you see the pictures of the other boats and you go, okay, well, that's why I'm sliding down. So, and that's just, I'm very unusual from my perspective, and I appreciate the heck out of it, and like I say, Bob and I have gone at it tooth and nail, and yet, he's right there. I say, listen, I'm using this sail configuration for the Chicago Mac. I'm using this sail configuration for the Bayview Mac, and I'm just telling you that. So let's just sail even, and that's the way we like to do it.
I think the folks below you guys in various categories could learn something from that lesson. I really do. So,
well,
anyway.
I think, I would hope so. And when you look at DRYA sailing, that seems to be contracting. It would be more fun to. I mean, I remember the days when you had 200 boats on a Saturday, and that's hasn't happened in a long time, and it's sort of a sad thing. And for me, I love getting out and sailing, but with my boat on the west side of the state, we don't get to do it as much as sailing 3 times a week down at Bayview, which is what I'd really love to be doing. And it just seems that I think if you could get more help to the people trying to get into racing, it would benefit everybody.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm looking forward. It's going to be a fun summer, I think, with some of the races coming up. We wish you the best of luck and have a happy 4th for sure.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I'm looking forward to actually finishing the Bayview Mackinac race this year.
Absolutely. Best of luck, and I'm sure we'll see you in Port Huron for sure.
Okay, Greg. Thanks.
Thanks, Phil.
I want to thank Dr. Philip O'Neill and certainly Bob Hughes for coming aboard and talking a little bit about the race itself. And we certainly want to thank the co-sponsors and the chairman of the event for South Shore Yacht Club, Craig Griffiths and Sherry Kent. Sherry this year was no longer on a 52. She watched the race from a committee boat. And that was kind of interesting listening to the differences between watching and actually racing. So we hope you enjoyed this wrap up of the race. We will be back with a story race of the upcoming Bayview to Mackinac race, sponsored by Bayview. I think you'll find that to be a really interesting show, and hopefully we're going to bring you some live footage and coverage of that event coming up in just about a week and a half. So for everybody in bed in the back, this is Greg Norman for Inside Great Lakes Sailing. We'll see you next time.